Cześć! W dzisiejszym odcinku wracamy do natury. Będziemy rozmawiać o czymś pięknym, o czymś bardzo ważnym w innej części świata, a tą częścią świata są Hawaje. I dzisiaj będziemy rozmawiać o hula. Moim gościem jest Taniec, który zaraz Wam się przedstawi. I hula jest to taniec, z którym być może się spotkaliście, a przynajmniej z jego nazwą, albo z jego amerykańską reprezentacją z hollywoodzkich filmów. Tymczasem hula nie jest do końca tym, ale o tym opowie Wam już sam Lanakila. Welcome, Lanakila. Aloha. Thank you for being here. So maybe you'd like to start by introducing yourself?
Aloha no kako, o wau o Joshua Lanakila o ka aine ka pono mai guau. Mai ka moku o Hawaii, mai ka aina o Ahuaroa, o waipi o ko uawawa o mauna wake ako o mauna. O ke one ko ukahakai. E ko mea punahele e ole a me hula e ho'omau e ka mea Hawaii. E olelo aku I ka honua I ko kako mo olelo Hawaii no. So my name is Joshua Lanakila ka aina ka pono mai guau, and I come from the island of Hawaii. I come from the area known as Ahuaroa. My mountain is Mauna Kea, my valley is Waipio, and Keone is my shores. It is my kuleana, my responsibility, and my heart, and my iini, my desire to always to perpetuate the traditions of my people, and now also in the work of going out and retelling and keeping the story or telling the story correctly of my people, as it has been told by many others, and many times incorrectly. So this is my work I do today.
Okay, so we met in Hawaii, actually, totally by accident, because I spent 5 months living in Hawaii in 2014, 2015. And one day I found a poster on a poster board by a grocery store, which said Hawaii Aloha Aina invites you to a lecture called Malama Aina. And at the time I already kind of knew what those words meant, so I was very interested. I went there, I listened to 2 speakers, you were one of them, and then I got really emotional because if you learn a bit about Hawaiian history and you're from Poland specifically, then you see a lot of similarities, even though we're obviously completely different cultures in other parts of the world. And so I was very emotional, and I said, like, I'm from Poland and I understand what you're going through. And then you were like, oh, Poland, I go to Poland. And so within a couple of minutes, it turned out that I actually heard of Lanakila because he's been coming to Poland for the past 6 years. And I'd heard of him and of his hula workshops. And I didn't really know much about hula at the time. I had some images that were very kind of here and there, not really much knowledge. And then when I went to Hawaii, I started learning more about it. So could you say, as a cultural practitioner and also as a person who instructs other in hula, be it kids in Hawaii or, for example, us here in Poland, what is hula?
Hula, as it is said by a lot of my kupuna and our elders and teachers, kids sum up hula. I would like to quote Nancy Pua Kanahele, one of our kupuna. Hula is a reflection. It's a reflection of life. It's a way that we harness and mimic the motions of nature in order to tell the stories of what we are going through. And so we have the ancient dances of hula that remind us of those times and are laying out the history that took place at the time. As we are oral culture, before the written word was brought to us, we were able to secure and hold on to hundreds and thousands of years of history and knowledge, and from our ceremonies to planting instructions, fishing instructions, talking about political shifts and everything, all intertwined into our oli, into our chanting. Hula is the elaboration upon the chanting to help to tell that story. So that's why we see so many different varieties of hula, different styles, and even as time has changed, the hula has begun to evolve as well because it's reflecting all these changes in the world. So it's a way of being able to connect and tell story and tell history and tell past information through motion and through song.
So most of us have seen hula, and it's very Americanized way, I would say. Like, we might know it from Hollywood movies, and we might know the statues of girls that you put in a car, and that's probably like the gist of what you know about Hawaii. But that's not really what you're talking about right now.
It's been changing over the years. Definitely looking at like the time where we see like the typical coconut bras and grass skirts and that kind of motion, that came from a time when Hawaiians were really severely suppressed in our homeland, and it was predominantly, in some cases, some of these styles kind of came out of necessity to be able to survive, having to do something that's going to be able to that you could be paid for, make a living off of, having to entertain the military and the Navy ships coming in and stuff. So from that era, from way back in the 40s and the 50s, is kind of where that look came from. And Hawaii just was basically being promoted as the world's playground. The native people were simply good brown servants to bring you your drinks and take you out on a canoe ride and such. We still mahalo, we still thank our kupuna from that time. They were not afforded the access to the knowledge as we are today. You look at from way back after the fall of the Hawaiian kingdom, even during the kingdom time, there was a lot of shifting from the religious system, becoming converted to Catholicism and Christianity. So that really stomped out or minimized and sent a lot of our traditional mindsets and practices into hiding. We're lucky today that we had those who were able to take a lot of these things underground to keep them safe and protected. And even in some cases too, we just, some of these new hula, or those new at the time hulas that came forth, were particularly put together outside of the traditional realm in order to appease and to entertain. And all of our traditional and our more sacred arts, of course, reserved and kept where they belong. So it wasn't to intertwine these things together. So kind of taking the basic steps of hula in a nutshell, and we'll dance about these other things, but that's also a way of protecting the sacred and the traditional ways. So it's today's time, it's kind of a little bit, it's a shifting now where we're not afraid anymore. We are, we don't feel that we need to hide to protect. In fact, we are telling our story because one thing that happened in the hiding or having to hide to protect is also whenever some information got out, it was taken and turned into, a lot of times bastardized and sold all over the world. And now we have all these strange things coming out, a whole pono and huna and these all over the world. We go to places and we see this strange types of hula, but that's when we weren't able to take charge of the narrative and to express and share how deeply important this tradition is. That's when it could become fluffery. And it was like something I discovered my first time here in Poland. Many people, there was people who came from Hawaii or had some time in Hawaii, and they came all the way over here and they began to sell our culture here. And people, just mesmerized by the idea of it, got involved, not knowing that a lot of it was, not pono. So it's an interesting thing at this day and age that, Kanaka Maoli, native people, we are now coming out to tell our own stories, and sometimes having to call out some of these falsehoods and stereotypes, and sometimes not always just to call it out in a negative way, but just to educate. Mm-hmm. That's my big step forward as a teacher myself too. It's about education, proper education. It was an improper narrative that went out for a long time, and it's not just myself, and I might be one of the bigger presence here in Poland, but many of our people are traveling throughout the world, and it's shifting now to where, yes, we can still hold on to the joyous, more free, fun hula awana that we enjoy at the parties and stuff too, but we're not afraid to speak and share of who we are and the sacredness, the sacred origins of hula and our traditions, so that when people do see these things, it becomes even more, it's even more enriching. Is a vehicle to help to ground you back and connect to something even deeper, particularly the relationship between kanaka, or man, and the aina and the environment.
Well, I remember one year when we had the Hawaiian festival in Warsaw. One of the kumos that came was Cody, yes, and so he sings, right, and he teaches singing. And I remember him telling the story of how he was taught to sing, for example, with the waves of the ocean and the cliffs. So it was even the learning process itself was very much based in nature. Because over here, I oftentimes think and feel that to us, ecology or connection to nature is something that is kind of outside of the regular everyday life culture. It's as if like we have our lives, and then sometimes we have the awareness, and we have the time, we have the means. We kind of go into ecology and living closer to nature, and it's a process that we usually have to go through to kind of go back to, unless of course you've been brought up in a certain environment with certain people. Whereas what I felt in Hawaii, talking to some of the people that I met there, was that the thing that we call ecology in a way is like ingrained in every part of the culture, in your language, in the way you look at the world, in your hula, in your singing, in the crafts, and growing of the plants. It's never a thing that is apart. It's always something that is like a very deep part of a cultural identity.
I'm questioned often, why are you going all the way there to teach? And I always have to ask myself that question over and over, because I could be spending my time teaching my own people. So why am I coming halfway across the world and sharing with others? Because there was something that happened my first year here. As I was taught in our tradition, we acknowledge that there are many, many gods. We have many gods in our own culture, in our own home of Hawaii, but we know that when we go and we traverse in other places, there are other gods, there are other systems, there are other beings. And so we are taught that when you go to someplace else, you acknowledge the gods of that place. So on my first visit, I was asked, "Oh, what would you like to see?" And honestly, all I could say was, I need to acknowledge the akua of this place, the akua, the gods of this land. So if there's in any way I could visit your mountains, your forest, your rivers, and your sea, that would be, good for me. One of my first experiences, we were able to go to school a short ways out of here, out of Warsaw, to one of my students' family's places, and there was on the edge of a forest, and there was this inquisitive nature from everybody in the couple of days prior to this, asking me a lot of very deep spiritual questions, and I began to realize, okay, this is not just an interest in hula. There's something more here. What is this? And so I asked that question. What are you guys really looking for? And there was many expressed that they want to feel that connection to nature again. They want to feel grounded and connected. I said, okay, well that expands even more. I'm not just going to teach you I'm not here just to teach you a simple little fun hula. I think if that is your true goal, is to find connection to nature, then I need to open something else to you. However, it's not going to work for you here. The Hawaiian culture was designed for tropical islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It is not designed for this continental environment here, a northern continental
and
environment.
for the people that are very different.
Well, the people are different because of the environment.
Yeah.
Culture is not a human making solely. Culture is the result of the influence of a natural environment upon a people over a period of time. Yeah. That's why we all look different. It shaped our physical forms and colors and size and hair and everything. We all evolved. Our ancestors evolved in order to live in these places. And through that evolution, the influence of the environment, that's why our languages are different. Our language was obtained by the sounds of our environment, and then our people began to articulate through sound ways of communication. But it first came from the environment. We dressed the way that we dressed because of what we had around us. We ate what we ate. So our culture was completely influenced by our landscape. As you move to other regions, Other places are different, so it changes. So that's why even in Poland, I've seen like way down in the mountains, it looks very different than what we've seen from down in Gdynia. Come to Hawaii, as small as we are, from Hamakua to Kona, we're different. It's still the same. There's still a lot of similarities, but it's different. Hula is that as well. So there's many different styles of hula because different hula schools, or what we call halau, different hula schools and different traditions were from one particular place, and that environment influenced and instructed those motions. So you'll see some styles that dance very, very down low, very strong and firm, and other styles that are very lofty and go up on their toes. And then you just have many different styles, but you see this origin is grounded in this landscape. This type of hula is grounded in this. So mo'okuauhau, or lineage and genealogy, is very, very important in Hawaiian culture altogether, but also in hula. What you're learning, it comes from someplace. That particular style of doing a step, a basic step, comes from a particular tradition. Some things are very similar, some things shift and change completely. But in wanting to learn the hula, wanting to learn the chants, there's many things. It also, in today's time, begs the question of how much you're willing to give. Because there's many different levels to hula. There's different from just basically being like pula pula, just like a fledgling dancer, to becoming an olapa, a proficient dancer, then to become a ho'opa'a. The ho'opa'a then is from one who has gone through the training of dancing, then training in the drumming and the chants particularly, and then and there's all these many levels even before getting to be a kumu hula, which is a formal hula instructor, or even a hula lo'ea, which is like the master of a tradition. Where really does one want to go? How in depth does one want to be? And in some cases, then, as much as you want to give, as much as you want to delve in, will also determine how much you're going to get, and how much a kumu or a teacher will invest their time in you. Hawaiian culture really is not about serving the student. It is not for that the student or the tradition needs to come down to the level of the student. The student needs to step up. And so we don't like to lower the standard. Get up to the standard. We will help you through it or push you through it, but if you're not willing to do the work, then you don't deserve the hula. So there's a very strong discipline to hula. And hula truly more is a way of life, more than it's just about a dance. It is a form and an art that instructs us and guides us on how to live. So for those of us who truly live hula, it's our whole way of being. We see the world through the lens of our tradition and our practice of hula, as if you were to be a kanaka mahiai, if you were a farmer, or if you were a fisherman, or if you were a weaver, or if you were an artist. You see the world through the lens of your what do you call that? Your traits.
Yeah, how did your hula come about in your life?
So hula was around me my whole life. When I was really, really young, I was mostly watching my sisters. My sisters danced hula. At that time though, back in the early 90s and stuff, it was very rare to see male dancers right off the bat. The American brain just puts everything, any movement of hips or anything is feminine. And so it really discouraged a lot of men from dancing out of that kind of egotistical male whatever stupidity.
Because traditionally it wasn't so.
No.
Hula was never like a one or the other.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I remember being interested, but at that time too, even my mom was kind of like, no, you're not going to dance hula. Just like, no. In elementary schools in Hawaii, there's like Hawaiian studies classes and stuff, and so we've learned like little hulas or little songs here and there. But it wasn't until I got to high school that I began to really more get into hula, because that's when the Hawaiian charter schools began. The first Native Hawaiian public charter school, Kano Ka'aina, opened up, and so it was a unique learning environment, and in that, based in Hawaiian culture, being able to meet all the standard school requirements, but being able to create the curriculum themselves, particularly through cultural practice. Hula was something that we all had to learn. That was my first experience really having to once, twice, sometimes 3 times a week we had an hour of hula. And no matter whole school, from kindergartners, preschoolers, all the way up to seniors, we all had to dance. And that's like I really started to feel it and really started to move in it. And in that too, again, that's not quite a traditional setting of learning, but that's how we began to connect with the places where we're at and the names of our vahipana, of our different places, of our environment, of our history was all in our hula. I think I was in the 11th grade when I was invited by Tipua case to join her hala. That's more of a traditional setting. And again, it only began once I was able to dedicate and discipline. It's something like, if I was like, I don't want to go today, then I'll be lucky if I'm allowed back again. It's like you show up and you dedicate or don't come. So I was able to dedicate, and so I gave, and I danced for a number of years with her, and then I shifted when she kind of shifted as well to getting involved with much more community things, and now through this tradition of unu kupu kupu, vaika unu, the halau, and then that's my dedication there too. So being grounded in that, but also it's a unique time in Hawaii too, where we are pushing for more Hawaiian education, even in our your typical primary school, and actually all the way into high school. And so have been able to introduce these concepts to the wider education, through the wider education community or schools. Having to step out of the halal realms, there's things that we would love to teach our kids through a cultural lens. However, we cannot bring the expectations and the standards of halal into a typical DOE school. So that's when we will create hula and chants and stuff that are kind of out of the kapu of the halal that we can give to the kids that are okay, to do your best that you can, and in the hopes of getting like I experienced, you might get 2 or 3 kids that really grasp onto it, and then if they want to go further, then they'll find a halal, or we'll get them to a halal, then they can go to more training. But everybody to be able to experience it and to learn, and some kids, they enjoy it, but it's just not their thing. It's not that everybody has to become a hula dancer, but then in some cases too, I know some of there have been a lot of the boys that I've taught over the years, they got it, they loved the hula and stuff when they were in high school, and they're not dancing hula anymore, but they'll always have a respect for it. It's not, they're not looking at it through the Western eyes anymore, which is what the Americans would love, because it just pulls our people away from it. But being able to experience it through their own cultural identity, through the lens of their own cultural identity, there's a respect for it no matter what. There's a respect for those who dance it. So that's where my hula experience has come from. As a Hawaiian educator, that's where I actually, that's how I am teaching here. My kumu, my teacher, allows me to be able to come out and share, especially things that aren't of our hula tradition, because it's coming from the Noah or kind of free realm of educational information that we share amongst Hawaiian educators. And then if I wanted to do anything deeper that might involve more tradition, that I need to consult through my kumu first.
And your kumu was here 2 years ago.
And that's the only reason I was able to teach some of our things, was because in the understanding to prepare my dancers here in Poland for the arrival of my kumu the following year. But like I expressed with all of my Polish students, you'll never be Hawaiian, so stop trying to be. Yeah. You can learn of our culture and tradition, but in that too, you will never really understand hula. For me and for us to really understand our hula is understanding our ancestors, respecting our ancestors and our elders, and knowing our environment. So you will share with the Polish dancers, you will never really have that connection to your environment through hula. Yeah. You need to find it through your own. The hula and the Hawaiian culture can help to offer a lens and a perspective as you recover and sometimes have to remake your connection to your environment. So a number of my students here, I require them to do their Slavic studies. In the first couple of years, I just heard excuse after excuse. You cannot find this, it was wiped out. And every year they're finding more and finding more. In my first 3 days, my first year in Poland, it was able to manifest to me. I discovered the name of one of the high ancient gods of Poland, his physical manifestation, and it was like, oh really? You cannot find it. I found it in a few days. The question is, are you looking? Are you asking? And are you going and being involved with your place?